amazing panelists are here. They're going to do most of the talking today. I'm really excited because basically the gist of this panel is about how entertainment is evolving. We all know about needle drops, you know, like the famous ones recently have been Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush or Murder on the Dance Floor by Sophie Ellis-Bextor, which were songs that already existed and got put into, you know, there's multiple examples going back to like Snow Patrol and Grey's Anatomy or whatever. But now music is no longer kind of ready, you know, being put in as an afterthought in film, TV, streaming, and other forms of media. Songs are now, as the description of this panel says, I'm just going to read it because they said it best. Songs are now defining the entire story arcs from the very beginning, with songwriters helping to drive the creative process, often serving as screenwriters, executive music producers, directors, and more. And this amazing panel, you know, is some of the most respected and innovative minds in music and in the game. So I think you would be best to introduce yourselves and what your role is in this world, and then we're just going to get to talking. So I'll go down the line, start with you, Stephanie.
Sure. Hi, my name is Stephanie Langs. I work at Creative Artists Agency in Los Angeles. I've been at CAA for just under 20 years. Before CAA, I worked at various entertainment companies, but always in music, and music and storytelling has always been my passion. I work in our music crossover department, which means I work across all of our music clients on the roster and help to cross over into film and television primarily, although crossover means a number of things now. It's digital and mobile and gaming and advertising, podcasts, stage, crossovers a lot. And I have the great privilege and honor of working with some tremendous talent and on the teams of great artists. If I just name a few, I work with the great Tori Amos and Tom Morello and Leland and Rodney Jerkins and Julie Michaels. I also work with our New York theater set to bring our Broadway writers into film and television. So I also sit on the teams of Pasek and Paul, Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss, Barlow and Bear. That's me, so thank you for having me.
Thank you. Eduardo?
Hello, my name is Eduardo Cabra. Thank you for this moment and this opportunity to speak a little bit of myself and the things that I have done. But I'm a co-founder of a group named Calle 13. Was really huge in Latin America, and also I'm a producer, and I have worked a lot of Latin American acts. And in the last years, I have been scoring. I have scored for four movies in Puerto Rico, and last score that I did, it won Best Movie in the Sundance festivals. So I'm really proud of that job, and yeah, I'm a musician and a producer. So that's me.
Morning. My name's Rich Robinson, and I work for Warner Chappell Publishing. I'm Executive Vice President and oversee sync and licensing globally, based in Los Angeles. And I work with all of our songwriters and our catalogs in the world of film, television, advertising, games, and across any form of media, really. So it's really about partnering up and, you know, working with great talent, and how can we kind of explode that and amplify it and work on behalf of great writers. So thank you.
And last but not least.
Hi, I'm Justin Tranter. My main job is writing pop songs for pop stars, with them and for them and all that fabulous stuff. I also am a publisher. I have a joint venture with Warner Chappell, so have a bunch of brilliant young writers and producers signed to me. And then kind of since COVID, I've been doing a lot of film and TV, whole like 30 original songs for a show on Paramount Plus last year, a Netflix movie, end titles for big blockbusters and all that good stuff. So I'm deep in the film and TV world the last couple of years, which has been really fun.
Well, let's get deeper into the TV and film world. Yeah, so yeah, of course, applause. So like I was saying, this whole panel is sort of about a relatively different idea of what sync is, or the approach to sync, than what people think of. Not songs sort of being selected by a filmmaker or TV producer after and going, oh, this would be good for a scene. Let's put this in this TV episode in this whatever. But, you know, kind of the artists being involved from the very beginning of the development process. So Rich, I kind of want to start with you. because at Warner Chappell, you've sort of retooled your whole approach to sync over there to be more of this kind of model. Can you tell me about that? Tell us about that and why? Like, why this shift and why now?
Yeah, sure. I think our approach to this is, obviously, as a publisher, we believe wholeheartedly in the value of songwriting and music and composition and the power that it can do for other mediums and emotion. I speak to filmmakers a lot who always tell me that music is 50% of the story, and then also tell me they haven't got any money in the next sentence. But that's that. But it's really, really powerful in the content and the story making process. So, obviously the way that any content is made is a certain timeline, and there's reasons why music ends up being last or in that process. But there's so much value in the song, not only in its in itself as a song, but to drive storylines. And we kind of believe that I've heard a lot about how sync is a great medium for songwriters or for music, which of course it is. But I kind of want to flip it and say, songwriters are a great medium to help you tell your story and bring excellent value to that process. And it's not just about songs that are very music-based or musicals. I think that the way that songwriters approach storytelling in a really concise fashion is such a powerful asset that filmmakers just don't utilize enough. And I think by talking to and working with songwriters really early in the process, I think you'll get a better end product. And that's something that we really want to embrace by working with all of our partners across the media to give access to our talent. And I think that's us lending you brilliant talent aside from what the output of the song is.
Awesome. So this is for Justin Eduardo. What is the artistic process in terms of how early, like what are some examples of when you've been brought on really early onto a project, and how did that shape the project from the beginning? How much input did you have? Do you have any anecdotes about how maybe a filmmaker's vision changed because of the music you were writing or because of the discussions you were having?
My experience is what he's saying, that it usually comes at the end, and for me it's like it's kind of difficult because is everything is running late, so you have to go into a mindset to be sharp and to be like a sniper in the ideas and to develop and to try to work as a team, to try to get the idea of the director into the place that he or she is looking, So I trust a lot in the communication and the communication as a team. So to be honest, I would love to have in the projects that I have done. I would love if I could have more time, or maybe start with them, maybe start talking with the director and to try to shape the ideas, because when I make my songs, my music, when I start making song 20 years ago, it all started in the idea. And in the band that I used to have with my brother, we started with that. The power of the idea it was very important to my brother, because the band that I used to have, that it was really nice. It was with my brother. It was a family project. So we started talking about that, about I want to make a song about this and that. Actually, there is a song about that we did too many years ago that is like the way of the bullet. So the moment when you pull the trigger until the moment it gets to anything or a person or anything. So I start developing ideas that maybe influence of Ennio Morricone project into the song. It would be nice to develop what he's thinking to make in the lyrics, because he was in charge of the lyrics. So the same thing can happen in movies, and in this kind of project, you know, to try to develop an idea, a sound, because as he said, you know, music is like, I feel the same way. It's like 50% of the feelings that you are trying to make the people to connect with, you know. So yeah, that's my experience.
And then, yeah, and Justin, I want to talk with you about that as well, especially, you know, Ed mentioned the time constraints and stuff, and I'm sure it's very different from when you're writing for someone like Selena Gomez, or when you were, you know, working with your previous band, Semi Precious Weapons. This is probably a whole different world in terms of the timing and the art by committee and all that.
Yeah, I mean, when I write songs with and for pop artists, there's maybe 3 people who have to like say, yes, we love that song. The artist, maybe their manager, if they're that type of manager, and like their A&R. That's it. On a TV show, there's like over 40 people who have to approve every lyric, every melody. You're getting random notes about like a horn sound from someone who doesn't even know it's a horn. You know.
How many songs did you do for Rise of the Pink Ladies?
For Rise of the Pink Ladies, it was 30 original songs.
And you had to do that for all of those? It was that process for that many songs?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It was, which I'm not spilling tea. I've talked publicly about this before. It was. I'm so glad I did it. I learned so much, but also learned that going forward, a show where music is at the core of the show, me just being executive music producer isn't enough, because I'm still very much like an employee. I need to be executive music producer and overall producer, executive producer over the whole project, because if there's 30 original songs in a 10 episodes, it's a lot of music. So for me to not, the music expert, to not really have full say in what should be happening, it was a great learning lesson for me. So going forward, and there's a couple new projects that I have coming that aren't announced yet, but where I will sort of, I always want to be collaborative. Like I love to I want everyone to be heard, but if you know, 30% of the time spent on television is people singing, and the singing expert isn't really in charge of that, it can get quite messy. And the time constraints, I've seen all sides of it. I've had a movie project where like there was 4 original songs and 2 covers, and we had 4 days to do it, which is that's bad. That's not helpful for anyone. But the movie ended up doing amazing, so I guess it was all meant to be. But
which movie was that?
It was called Purple Hearts on Netflix.
Yeah. Did very well.
Yeah, it's like the 7th most watched movie in Netflix history. It's crazy. Very like dramatic and soapy if you're into that sort of thing. But it stars Sophia Carson, who's a dear friend of mine and like one of the coolest people ever. So for her, I said, yes, I will make 6 songs in 4 days. But it's only because it's you. So you would prefer to have a much longer lead time than that.
Actually, yeah. Do you guys, in an ideal world, if you're in the negotiation stage with a filmmaker or whatever, like how much time would you want, you know, roughly, depending on the project?
Yeah, I think it will depends in the idea of the project. Maybe a score, it depends on the complexity of what you want to do with the sound, you know. But for me, I just need like to be at the beginning of the process, maybe to be part of the team at that moment. So we can like promote the communication between all the directors, the producers, all the people, the writers, you know. I would love to have the script so I could read it before it and start like imagining things like reading a book. So that will help me a lot.
Yeah, also because I don't do scoring, it's always writing songs that these characters are singing. So I'm writing lyrics that are a part of the script. So to be brought in too late to that process, it's a little clunky, because it's like I'm basically in some ways I'm co-writing the script with you, because I'm writing lyrics that your characters, it's part of their journey. So it's like if you look at, I'm doing a little bit of theater as well now. In theater, whoever's writing the script, which they call the book in theater, whoever's writing the book and who's writing the music and the lyrics, like you are in this together from the very beginning. Because there it is very much respected that this is a piece of this, like a serious, you are all telling the story together from the start. And I think film and TV is starting to see the benefit of that, and we're getting closer to it, but sometimes deals take too long or whatever it might be that it just doesn't, you don't get the luxury.
Well, that brings us to our hero, Stephanie. You obviously represent the artists, and it's part of, I assume, I'd love you to speak to this, your job to protect the artists when maybe they are getting too many notes or having unreasonable demands about time constraints. Like, what is your part in the process for advocating for the artists and also advocating for the end product, a great film or television show?
It's a good question. No, I mean, you're exactly right. I am an advocate for the artist, so it's my job to make sure that the artist is set up and protected in a way that they can succeed and that they can win and they can do their best work. So I think Eduardo and Justin have just touched on some of the challenges that you might face. It's time constrictions, it's budgetary, it's creative differences, it's personnel, and you try to from the outset, you try to, manage all of that as much as you can. But of course, things come up along the way, and I think it's really important that you're in touch with your artists and your team, and you understand what their day-to-day is, and are they getting what they need? Are they being supported? And if they're not, then it's our job to, pick up the phone, make the call, have the tough conversation, be very transparent about the issues. I think, kindness and respect go a long way when you're having those conversations, because at the end of the day, you're all partners in making the project as successful as it can possibly be. So from my standpoint, my guiding principle is to make sure that the artist is set up to do that. But again, you're a partner on something that's much bigger. And to your point of art by committee, there's a lot of different moving pieces, and understanding how all those pieces fit together is really important. But again, it always starts with making sure the artist is safe and protected and feels like they have what they need.
So forgive me, this is a naive question, but how is that different from being, a manager or an A&R person? Obviously a lot of people who work on these projects have a team. What is the advantage of having an agent in their corner when they, sign on for a film or television project?
Yeah, I mean, listen, artists have a whole ecosystem that surrounds them. So it's a label, publisher, managers, attorneys, and agents. But from the agency standpoint, I think we're different in just the nature of an agency, the way we're set up. I represent musicians, but we also represent directors and showrunners and writers and producers. So we often see projects very early on. So to our point of tracking things early and putting attachments in early, we try to do that. Sometimes we see projects from inception all the way to production to completion. So we might be helping to finance a film through our finance group. We might be attaching a director. We might be looking to cast. So that's a lot of information and intelligence that we can kind of bring to the wider team just because of the nature of how we work and all the different touch points. And then there's also the relationships there. So if we work with a director or producer, we can also kind of sort of work internally to make sure we're feeling supported. I would say we're also, we're very hands-on on deals, the negotiations, making sure it's set up right so the artist is protected. Not so much on sync because we don't have authority on the copyrights. That would be your label and publishers, but certainly if it's original work, commissioned, bespoke for a project, we can be very active in constructing those in the right way. And I think we're also we're another creative ally in the artist camp because of our position and relationships and access to information. I think artists find that that's quite beneficial, and an agent can really be an asset to the wider team.
Awesome. So any people can chime in this. So the whole premise of this panel is the idea that ideally the artists, the songwriters, are getting on early, and you mentioned about wanting to see a script, how that's ideal. So I think if you have any anecdotes, I think it'd be interesting. Do you have any examples of something that you were working on got changed? The producer, director, whatever, changed a scene, a plot point, any dialogue because of the music that was written for it, where it kind of steered the project a little differently because of the music that was added at some point in the process. Do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, I mean, on the Rise of the Pink Ladies TV show, most episodes had 3 songs in them. The pilot had 5. The second episode then only had 2 songs because of budget issues. The shooting the musical numbers are really expensive. You have to pay the musicians, blah, blah, blah. Which I actually, side note, the best part about working in film and TV as a songwriter is they actually pay you. Where as a pop songwriter, I go to work for free every single day. And if the song goes to radio, and only if it goes to radio, do I make money. Now, I'm not complaining for myself. My life has been fierce. And radio has been good to me. But I advocate for young songwriters all the time, for the next generation, where radio is dying and they are not getting paid. So as a publisher, I do a lot of this film and TV work so that people sign to me actually can pay their rent for a couple months, because film and TV actually pays you. So thank you, film and TV, for paying songwriters. That's what a novel concept. So in episode 2 only had 2 songs, and it was this really cool moment where the first time in this process, so also even though it was episode 2, it was the very end, because we watched all 10 episodes and we're like, oh fuck, episode 2 is moving really slow because there isn't enough music. So it was the first time I got to just watch an episode or read a script and go, I think a song should go there. And so I got to, it was sort of like the most emotional part of the episode. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, God, why isn't she singing there? That's like the ultimate, like the #1 rule of musical theater. Like when the emotion gets too high, that's when you start singing. So I got to say, I want to write a song right there. And that part, and it was ended up being, you know, kind of the song that did the best for the show. It was the song that the fans connected with the most.
Which song was it?
It's called I Want More. And it was just, I felt really, it was really rewarding to me of like, oh, I the one time I got to pick where a song goes, it ended up actually really connecting the most with the fans. And so I think it's a great lesson of like, let the songwriters be a part of the storytelling, not just like, hey, do what we want you to do. Do what we say. Let us, what are your thoughts? Where should they sing? Where should there be music? What should the song be about? So since I was able to do that for that song, it kind of became like the standout song for the show.
And I just to add to that, I just think what an asset, you know, and I think what we try and advocate for is obviously having, you know, more time to produce great art is always going to, generally speaking, you know, produce better results. But really, I think that it's just a brilliant anecdote of what an asset songwriters can be to the storytelling process when consulted in a way that's broader. And, you know, as a publisher who's obviously just trying to advocate for songwriters, I just think the talents that they have to tell a story are really underutilized. And I remember Justin talking about his process a little bit at one of our events about how he talks to the artist and teases out the story. And I think that it sort of resonated with me of what a great asset that can be.
Any other examples?
Yes, I don't have an example of the music or the score that I did changing the plot or anything, but I have an example of the budget changing the score. So
Meaning more?
yeah, the thing is that a director came to me and told me, okay, we have this amount of money, so what we can do. So okay, I told him, okay, we have to think what we can do with that kind of amount. So I just tell him, okay, let's do just 3 instruments. Let's try to do the whole score with 3 instruments. So I try to think in giving every instrument like a personality. So it was like a percussion instrument, a guitar, and a tres cubano. Tres cubano is an instrument from Cuba. And the guitar was doing the harmony, the tres cubano was doing the melody, and the guiro was doing the percussion. So I did all 3 instruments. So, and I was vibing. I did with that score in like 2-3 days. But yeah, but it's
What's
like
the movie called? That sounds so
Antes
cool.
que cante el gallo. It's a movie from Puerto Rico. It's very nice. It's a movie from the country part of mountains from Puerto Rico. And it was very educating also for me and also as because the movies in Puerto Rico and almost in the whole Latin America there's a budget problem, so you have to be creative and you have to thinking in what I can do with this, and I think that was a nice way to work, and it came very nicely, very neat. Also, not try to do a lot with small amount of resources. Let's do a good thing with simple ideas and try to maximize the idea and the amounts of the resources, the instruments with the budget that we have. So that's part of a constraint that we as Puerto Ricans and Latin Americans have, in every project.
Rich, Stephanie, do you have any examples of artists you've worked with where that, the project changed because of the artist's input into the script or into the storyline or anything like that?
Yeah, a few. One that sort of sticks in, I worked on a film called Kill Your Friends a few years ago, which has Nicholas Hoult and James Corden in it, and it's got a fictional band in it, and we'd kind of put that band together and written a song, and the song that was written, they rewrote the dialogue for the scene because they were watching the band, so it helped drive that scene, and it got them to write quite a good joke in it, I suppose, which is kind of powerful in a film where you can get that. So, and that was a good example of that was. We were in that process very early and amongst the discussion and speaking directly with the director and the writer, and so we were able to kind of get a better end result, and it changed the line of dialogue in it.
Yeah, I would just say maybe the one that comes to mind is Greatest Showman, which Pasek and Paul did, and I think that their attachment early on in that process was pretty critical, because I do think what we're all sort of saying is the music and the songs need to feel really organic to the picture and the project or the series, and you don't want to force feed music in places it shouldn't be. So, with that in mind, having these conversations very early is so important. And on that case with Greatest Showman, it was many demos that they submitted over a period of time to sort of figure out what fits the story best, what serves the story best, and delivering multiple demos, again, over a couple of years, actually. And then there were workshops that had to be put together to sort of really get the story right with the songs in, serving the purpose they were meant to serve within the story. So, again, having that attachment of artist, songwriter, collaborator within the story is critical.
So I imagine, quite a few people who are in the audience here are maybe artists who, it's interesting, Justin, that you mentioned how radio's dying, or there are younger artists who aren't going to get on the radio, the way the last generation, or even, in the last few years. How many people out here are artists who kind of want to do this? Raise your hands. All right, good amount of people. So I want to make sure, there's a lot of ways we could take the rest of this discussion, because there's a lot of trends. There's the trend of musicals, being adapted for the screen. Recent examples are like The Color Purple and Mean Girls. There's obviously the trend of contemporary pop artists and singers moving into this world, like you guys, and some other examples I have are Leland, who does all the great musicals for RuPaul's Drag Race, and Blake Mills, who did Daisy Jones and the Six. That was very successful. And the late, great Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne, who did Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and a lot of other things. There's also the trend of, executive music producers, looking at soundtracks. Like the one I wrote down was obviously Kendrick Lamar and Black Panther, but Barbie. We just came off of the Oscars, and Mark Ronson and Andrew Wyatt. They were all over that soundtrack. I'm Just Ken. And then of course there's kind of those TV shows, like Rise of the Pink Ladies is a good example, but there's TV shows from the past like Daisy Jones, Glee, Nashville, Smash. I was a fan of Smash, by the way. Smash got a hard time, but I liked Smash. So, yeah, of all of these, witches, do we have any Smash fans? No? Okay, yeah, someone raise their hand. Good. which of these, all these things that I just sort of rattled off, do you see like this world going in the most, or it has the most opportunities for artists, especially young artists who aren't established yet, if they want to go down that route of working in film and TV? Which do you see has the most opportunities moving forward?
I think there's opportunity for all of it, but I think what's important is whether it's, you know, contemporary writers or Broadway writers or executive music producers, it has to serve the project. And I think that's what you have to figure out from the beginning. The vision for the project and how music's going to be integrated is important. So yes, while Broadway writers moving into film and television makes a lot of sense because they know the craft of driving story through song. Contemporary writers obviously are storytellers through music, and bringing that like fresh energy and perspective is so important. With executive music producers, that role is a really big role. You're essentially running the music department for a project. And that's, you know, hiring other musicians, other writers, doing covers. You might be working with the music supervisor. You're working with, I mean, it's such a big role that requires a certain level of mastery. But I think also the point you bring, you know, Mark Ronson and Barbie was such a great collaboration with Mark's kind of retro vibe and that really playful world of Barbie. It was such a magic fit. So I think they're all trends. They all exist. They're all important. And I think it's just really finding what the project really needs and then assembling the team to then, you know, go execute and make something great.
I think it's somewhat cyclical in the sense whether we go from the trend of original song and needle drop and everything in between, and that kind of goes in something of a pattern. But I do think, generally speaking, you know, we've seen a content boom and lots of content being made, so there's lots of opportunities. To Stephanie's point, I think there's loads of different ways to approach it. I would say that, you know, to artists, sometimes we've seen people think of it as a bit of a shortcut to success, like sync's a great, you know, promotional tool, and I think that if that's your mindset, you're going to struggle. It's about loving the process and the art form as well as be able to create something that's going to work. And you know, Barbie is just a great example of brilliant songs and brilliant songwriters and great artists matched with a really good project, and then it's super powerful because I think it, you know, in itself, it's not a thing. Like the sync is not a thing in itself. It's a collection of lots of different things at the same time. And I think, you know, one thing that I thought of is I was watching this show called The Tourist on Netflix, which is really great. And there was a scene that used Murder on the Dance Floor, which was cool, but had no impact. Didn't, you know, blow the song up, wasn't a thing. And then you see that same song in Saltburn, and it has a whole different effect. So, you know, how songs are used and placed is really, really critical, because sometimes people think, hey, it's a great song, then it'll do the work for it, and it's not the case. You have to dedicate time to it. And I think, you know, a lot of songwriters ask about, you know, making original content or scoring and don't always necessarily appreciate the discipline and the different kind of skill set that it takes from maybe doing an artist project.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things in there that I could expand on too. That like, one, like writing song, like when I was in a band, I was like, oh, we just need that big sync. That is a thing that artists have been telling themselves for the beginning of pop music. Like, oh, that big sync will change my life. And then sometimes you start writing songs with that in mind, and then your songs just get watered down and not as good as they should. All the songs that I have had that have turned into really huge sync songs for commercials, TV, movie trailers, like Cake by the Ocean and Believer, Imagine Dragons, those two songs, we weren't writing them being like, oh, this is going to be sync gold.
We're going to get in the Duncan Hines commercial.
Right? We just, like, oh, this will be, you know, the next Apple commercial. We didn't think, we just wrote what we thought was great that day. And then, so I think that is an important part of, as just like if you're singer-songwriters or in a band or whatever, like don't just write what you think is amazing. And if it's meant for sync, it'll just find its way. If you start thinking about it, I think when people think about writing for sync, the songs get really generic, really quick. And like, as a co-writer of Believer by Imagine Dragons, I don't exactly know what the song is about, but I think if we were thinking about sync, it would have been even less specific. Like, I think what makes that song special and why it's connected so much is because I don't even really know what it's about. But if we would have been thinking about sync, it would have gone, I think, a step too far. That is an important thing I think you said too. And then Stephanie, what you were saying about being an executive music producer especially on a series, it is an obscene amount of work. And I think a lot of people, whether they are artists or songwriters or both, don't understand, which you pointed out too, of like what you're about to embark on. And like there are like, you have to navigate a whole executive ecosystem inside of a television studio, and it is, it's not for the faint of heart. And like you have to really want to learn the art form of television to do that. It's not just like, oh, this is going to help my songs. It's like, no, you have to be committed to that, because it's an obscene amount of money that they are putting into the whole production, that if you aren't respecting that, you will end up in a lot of trouble and probably get fired.
I've got an extreme example of that is what a songwriter once asked me. He said, I would love to score a video game, and I love the Assassin's Creed. And then I was like, in the last Assassin's Creed, there was 75 hours of music. And it took somebody 5 to 7 years. Are you sure you want to? Maybe not.
So it's interesting because we talked about needle drops and sync, and obviously when a filmmaker is looking to put music in their project, there's a seemingly infinite amount of music since the dawn of music being made that they could choose from, and sometimes it works very well, like Saltburn and Murder on the Dance Floor that's a 21-year-old song. Obviously, I brought up Running Up That Hill. That became a hit 37 years after it came out. And, I think about soundtracks like Guardian of the Galaxy or Boogie Nights, if we go back to the 90s, where, they used period music. And also, like, some of the more successful music films that have come out in the last few years are biopics. So obviously, Rocket Man had existing songs from Elton John. Bohemian Rhapsody had existing songs from Queen. So when a filmmaker is making the decision to be like, let me see what songs already exist that might work for my musical movie, or let me commission new stuff, like what's in it for them? Because it's, ostensibly easier, I would assume, to, go into catalogs of Warner Chappell music that already exists. What's in it for the filmmaker to take that extra step and commission someone like you guys to write new stuff? Because also there's that familiarity thing. It sounds kind of silly, but like, to use kind of a silly example, on American Idol, or shows like that, they always will criticize the contestants if they cover an obscure song, because they'll be like, oh, no one knew that song. And I'm like, okay, but yeah, do you want the person to vote for the next winner of American Idol because they sang that Beatles song really well? Or do you want them to prove that they could have a hit with a new song? So like the familiarity thing, Guardians of the Galaxy is a good example of like people having nostalgia for a song they already know. What's the benefit, or actually also the pitch process, to be like, no, you should have new music that no one knows yet, future hits in your project?
I mean, I think it comes down to what story they're trying to tell. If they're looking to have music, original music, it's because they want it to really sort of help tell the story in a way specific to that project. If you're looking for nostalgia, use a hit that people already know.
Because Barbie could have very easily gone that route.
Very
Use
easily.
songs from the 80s or
Yeah.
whatever.
But I think it's a great example of why it's arguably more powerful to have, the I don't know whether you saw that performance of I'm Just Ken at the Oscars. It was incredible, and to have that originality and an ownership. I don't mean in a copyright sense, but in a creative sense over that original song is so powerful if you get it right. I do think there's room for all of that, obviously, because there's as Justin says, it's about the story primarily, and if you get that right, it's really powerful. But when you do have something over the years of those classic movie songs, particularly in the 80s, where it was very common to have that original end-titled song that was owned by this movie, and there's certain songs where you hear them, you cannot think of anything else other than that movie, and that's really powerful. So I think there's room for everything, but when you get that original song right, I think it gives you this extra little bit of power and equity around, the brand of your movie, and it gets. And if you have a film that gets into the public consciousness, that let's sit down and watch that classic, then on a commercial level, that's got to be a huge upside.
And it becomes a great marketing tool as well if the original song connects. And I don't even mean like if it becomes a smash hit, like the Billie Eilish or Dua song from Barbie. In Pink Ladies, we could see if a song went mini viral. There was an amazing lesbian character, so Lesbian TikTok loved our show. Shout out Lesbian TikTok, we love you. It's a very fun place to be, by the way. If you're not on Lesbian TikTok, I recommend getting your algorithm to change. It's a much safer place than most of TikTok. But we could see if one of those character songs was going semi-viral just in that one niche part of TikTok, immediately led to more viewers that week of the show. On Purple Hearts on Netflix, the one song had over it wasn't crazy viral, but it was over 60,000 creates of the one song, and that Netflix very much credits a big part of the success of the movie, of the viewership of the movie, because that song was driving traffic back. So I think it should start in storytelling. That should be the goal always. But it does, I don't think Running Up That Hill drove more viewers back to Stranger Things. I think everyone was already watching it, and it drove a lot of people to Kate Bush, which is a beautiful thing to have happen. But I think original music can actually drive people back to the movie or the TV show in a way that nostalgic music won't.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of think, and we'll end by talking about, I do think we're kind of coming up on a golden age of original music and film, but I did want to get your thoughts about something, because I read, there was some marketing research done. They were talking about, it was specifically about the trailers for 3 recent musical films, which were Wonka, The Color Purple, that just came out, and Mean Girls, where they kind of downplayed in those trailers that those were musical projects, musical films, because there had been some market research that musicals don't do well, which I think this whole panel is refuting that that's a thing. And to the point where a friend of mine went to see Color Purple, the new one, the Fantasia from American Idol is in, and thought it was basically going to be a remake of the Whoopi Goldberg 80s movie, and was upset because the trailer had undersold that it was actually an adaptation of the Broadway version. So what are your thoughts about that, and how does that affect what you do, what you pitch, what gets greenlit? This kind of weird assumption, we've been talking about all these successful musical projects, but there is this assumption, is there an assumption in the industry that some people don't like musicals?
I mean, I don't work in a marketing department, so I'm possibly the wrong person to answer, but I think that, I as a kid, I loved musicals. Now I'm a little more picky in my taste. I think the older that you get, everybody is. But if you're going to make a movie musical, own it. But I don't work in marketing, so I don't really have a
Might be a better question for Stephanie or Rich.
Yeah.
Well, I feel the same way. I'm not sure I know how to answer that because I'm not in those decisions. I think it's really interesting. I'm sure it was based on whatever analysis, market research, et cetera. But I don't think it's reflective of musical films or series being made. I think there's
It's not affecting people saying, oh, we're not doing that anymore. We're cutting our music budget or anything like that.
No, but I think we also have to zoom out a little bit and expand the definition of what a musical is, because a lot of people might say musical is song and dance and cast breaking out into song, and that is true, that is a musical. But I think if you expand the definition, you'll see that there's so much musical programming that's happening all the time, always. Animation is full of music. You have all the biopics that you mentioned, the Bohemian Rhapsody and the Rocket Man and Bob Marley and Amy Winehouse, and you have
Bob Marley movie is huge.
Huge.
One of the biggest movies in the last few years,
Yeah.
certainly since we are coming out of COVID.
Yeah, and I'll even go back to older examples of 8 Mile. 8 Mile was a musical. Whiplash was a musical. The DNA of that film, set in a performance school, the drumming, that was a musical film.
Straight Outta Compton.
Straight Outta Compton, a musical film. So I think if you zoom out, like I said, and expand the definite, that whatever that was, that market research that said don't market it I don't know, interesting, but there's still a lot of music programming being made.
Absolutely.
I think just to add to that, the animation is a really interesting space for that. You know, as a person with young children, watching them respond to music is really interesting and so powerful, you know, as a young age. And things like, you know, Trolls, which has original songs and needle drops and everything in between and builds this world. And it's super powerful. I guess you don't think of it as a musical necessarily, but a lot of those even the Mario Brothers had so many songs in it, and music's a huge part of, particularly for young children, of how they connect with films.
Point. Yeah.
I just want to say that for me, musicals are a struggle because I need to read the subtitles, you know. So I'm like reading and listening and reading and listening. Yeah, but that's my my experience. Yeah, I prefer like to be in like the scoring, you know. I want to talk also about the work of Wendy Carlos. You know, for me that's like my goal, you know, like to use like non-traditional instruments and to try to be creative in morphing or try to make a change in the things and the instruments that we can use for simple, like to make people feel something, and I think like when the Wendy Carlos work is masterpiece, you know. I just want to say that, you know.
And look at someone like Giorgio Moroder when you're talking about those big 80s things. I mean, a total god, like Flashdance, on the song from Foxes, like Never Ending Story, Cat People, the list goes on, and from, you know, an electronic music background. So I feel like we're coming back on, you know, when you say Flashdance, when you say Footloose, whatever, you think of these big songs. So yeah, I think we're coming to like back into a music-driven age. But I want to make sure we get to these questions. We had some questions on the screen here that are submitted. I'll read them and then you guys can answer them. So the first question from Pedro Feltrin, I don't know who, that's who submitted it. I don't know who asked this question, but whoever asked this question, it's a great question. How do you maintain one concrete musical identity in a project and still diversify it when developing different separate parts of it? How do you connect them? Good question.
Well, my view on that is that therein lies the magic, right? You know, because if you can have a project with a diverse soundtrack, but still sound like a cohesive message. I think, again, it comes back to both the emotion and the creative idea that holds it together. You know, if you look at, I don't know, like Tarantino movies, you know, there's a certain sound and there's very different songs in it, really, if you pull them out individually. But, you know, what connects those parts of it? And I think it's just having a really good creative vision.
Well, I'd love Eduardo and Justin to talk about, because you have projects and you have a brand, I guess, for lack of a less cheesy way of putting it, but how do you maintain a concrete identity as an artist when you're working with so many different elements and different projects?
I don't know. It's something like when I start making music with someone and collaborating, it's something that you feel like should be like the right go-to place, like that works for the idea. It also depends in the idea and the director of what you're trying to get, but also when I work and when I try to work in okay, undo that. Okay, let me think in Spanish a moment. But cuando uno trata de trabajar la música, when you try to make music, you also try to make something different, a different recipe to try to make it. Yeah, it's not a place. It's a place that people can connect with, but also this your recipe, and I think that makes like it gives a little bit of an identity of the music that you make, and also it connects with the idea of the team. So it's the things as I said first, you know, it's something of you need a lot of communication, you know, with the team, and to be true also of the thing that you think is they are the correct way. You know, the things that you think are great. Yeah.
Justin, how do you? I'd love you to answer the question about maintaining an identity, a through line through everything you do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, you know, when I stopped doing my band like 11 years ago, I'm proud of the fact that I don't really have a songwriting style and identity. I think that if you're a super pop music fan geek, you can maybe hear that I use lyrically, I'm a little more colorful than the average pop songwriter. But besides that, I don't really have a sound, and that's intentional, because my job is to help the artist be the best version of themselves that day. Or if it's for film and TV, the script becomes the pop star, right? So I spend every pop session talking to the artist. What are they going through? What's their version like of truth that day? It can be something very vulnerable, like Selena Gomez, Lose You to Love Me, or it can be something ridiculous, like Cake by the Ocean. But those are still two very much like, that's a Jonas Brothers truth and that's a Selena Gomez truth. Like there's different, and so when I work on film and TV, the script becomes the pop star. So
Good way of putting it.
You know, it's like what is the most truthful version of this song for that character. So the characters become my pop stars in that process.
That's very nice what we're saying, because when you are in a studio making a song for a singer or whatever, sometimes I use the vibe of the person that is coming to record as a resource to do some song. If this person comes to the studio with a very happy, so let's do a happy song. So that's part of the recipe, and the main artist in film is the script. So you have to go around that, use that as a resource. So that's very nice. Yeah.
So that question actually was from Pedro, so thank you, Pedro, for that. The next question I have is from Kota Ito, which is, if a songwriter is also a screenwriter, which we've established that's the theme of this panel, what skill sets do you think are needed, and where do you think they can be learned?
I can answer that pretty quickly. Is collaboration. So I think never... Right, so if you're mainly a songwriter and you have written 1,000 songs, that is your expertise. If you have interest in writing scripts, do it by writing songs for someone who's writing that script, or get a co-writer. I just think co-writing is the way to learn everything. Even if you write most of your songs alone, I challenge you to try to co-write. Even if you decide you hate it, you'll learn something about yourself. And if you do hate co-writing, it's probably because your ego is getting in the way. So I think the best way to learn different skill sets is just to do it with other people who are really good at something that you're not good at.
Absolutely, I think that's great. I'm going to get to one more question while we have time, which is from Caitlin Kloss, which is, as this is a great question for everyone, as part of an artist team, have you encountered issues protecting small artists' interests in the shifting age of sync, works made for hire, retaining ownership, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Uh-oh, look on your face.
I mean, I mean, you need a good publisher. That's our sales pitch. But I think, you know, we believe intrinsically about retaining the rights of the songs that you create. But it's a complicated ecosystem, and I think it comes, again, that's a collaborative discussion, and it's a lot of that comes with understanding, having a really clear understanding of how rights work and being able to discuss it. And I think I would be skeptical about being told certain information around rights without exploring it and understanding with partners and consulting what the legalities of it are, and just really understand what it is you're either giving up or exchanging in this value proposition. Because, you know, as a songwriter, that's your asset, and that's what you've created, and you should be able to retain that. And people are, you know, borrowing from your skill set and your expertise to make other content. And the key thing was to be educated and make sure that you ask the right questions. I think that's really critical.
Is there, for people who don't have teams, is there a place that, like, online that you could point people to learn about this stuff, or is it just to start Googling?
Yeah, probably start. There's a lot of information, but I don't know whether there's a finite resource that's the best place to go. But do some research, and I think Google and look up, what it is. But where possible, consult, either a partner or consult some legal advice when you're being told that actually we're going to take the rights for this. Often that's people's MO is to, everybody wants to retain rights, and that makes sense. But I think, there is a lot of resource online to kind of work, but I think doing your homework and making sure that you're fully versed in what you're doing before you make any decisions and feel empowered.
Well, we're pretty much out of time. I want to say I would be remiss when we're talking about classic songs that we associate with movies from the classic era. We didn't get to John Hughes soundtracks, but I think you're the guys creating the John Hughes-like soundtracks of tomorrow. So before I let you go, first of all, thank you so much. You guys were amazing. Thank you, everybody. Is there anything you're working on now that you're at liberty to talk about yet that you want to be like, hey, tune in, this is coming out in the fall, or anything? You guys are all so busy. Anything you're working on?
My next film and TV projects have not been announced, but if there's any Chapel Roan fans here, she's an amazing new artist. I have Chapel Roan's next single coming out in a little bit, so please check out Chapel Roan. She's amazing she's announced it, so I'm allowed to say that. All the other stuff I have coming hasn't been announced yet. So.
Can't give us a scoop here?
I mean, I already asked if this is going on the internet, and it is. So,
Okay.
so
Anyone
no.
else can talk about?
There's a movie. It's called In the Summers. It already won the grand jury prize in the
Congratulations.
Sundance.
Sundance. Thank you. So it was a very nice. I worked with my brother also. My brother is acting, so he did a really nice job. Yeah, very nice. So it's gonna be out, I think, this year. So I'm very excited for.
Say the name one more time.
In the Summers.
In the summer.
Yeah, and yeah, that's it.
Rich, Stephanie, anything that you got cooking that people should be ready to tune in for coming up?
I'm going to be seen on your screen soon. There's projects I probably shouldn't talk about at this moment, but more to come.
Yeah, same for us. We've got so much, and I don't really want to pick anything out. We've got, work with so many amazing songwriters. There's a lot of great stuff. And
Obviously, that's the most basic takeaway from this panel is there's a lot of good stuff coming up, and the future is bright. So thanks again for creating the soundtrack to our future lives. Thanks, everybody, for coming by.